Writing a revision plan. So what is a revision plan? What goes into it? Well, as the name suggests, a revision plan is a plan or a strategy for revising a piece of writing. Revision plans should identify key elements to be revised for the next draft and include any ideas gained from reader feedback or that the author thought of since finishing the previous draft. Basically, the purpose of a revision plan is to map out all the tasks you need to do and all of the things you want to make sure that you address in order to revise the writing project. The value of a revision plan is that very few people actually sit down and revise as soon as they receive feedback. Instead, most of us get feedback and we think about the paper and have a lot of ideas, but it's still at least a couple of days, if not longer, before we actually return to the writing project and do the revision work. In that scenario, having a revision plan to refer back to helps you avoid losing any ideas or forgetting things that are important and that you were sure you were going to remember, but as it turns out, you don't actually remember very well. So a revision plan is a good practice in terms of helping you have a more productive and effective writing process. So what does a revision plan look like? Well, it can take any form that works for you, although for most people it's an outline or a bulleted list of tasks. I know that I prefer this type of list because I can check off items as I address them when I'm revising. But whatever form works best for you is fine. Generally, under a specific item, you want to include any details that are pertinent. Now, this might be comments by readers, it might be questions from your peer reviewers, or it could even be quotations from feedback you received. Or maybe it's questions you had after you wrote the draft and then got to thinking, oh, I wonder about. Maybe it's connections between sections of your project. Any ideas about a specific point can be listed underneath it in your revision plan. So, if you were talking about the introduction, under Revise Introduction, you could mark down, so-and-so had a question about this point. Or you might say, can I connect this part of the introduction to a section later in my paper that is similar? Is there a connection there that I haven't articulated yet? The other important thing to do is focus on global issues and then local issues. Just like we talked about in terms of the writing process and writing peer response letters, revision of content is always something we want to privilege. We want to address concerns about the content and other big issues before we worry about the presentation and move into the editing stage of the writing process. Now, it's tempting to do the local issues like grammar first because that's a very concrete thing you can do. People say, oh, well, it's easy for me to go back and put in my commas now that I understand the rule, or I can fix this word that I was chronically misspelling. And of course you can do that, and it feels very productive. But at the end of the day, fixing all the local issues doesn't change the fact that the global issues are still there. And global issues affect the whole paper, not just a small section of it, like a sentence or a paragraph. So prioritize the global issues and do them first. As you write your revision plan, you might simply put things down in the order that you think of them, but then go back and renumber or reshuffle them so that the global issues come first. The other thing to consider as you craft your revision plan is about striking a balance between how much time a task will take and how important it is to the paper. So, for example, it might be that one of the revision tasks you want to do is to revise a specific section and expand it. To do that, you might need to do some research or take an idea you only briefly mentioned and really expand on it. Now, if that revision is really important to the main idea of your paper, then that task needs to go at the top of the list, especially because it's going to take more time to accomplish. On the other hand, maybe there's a section you identify as a good candidate for expansion, but doing so isn't as important because expanding that section only affects a portion of the paper, not the whole thing. In that case, it's not as much of a priority, so it should be further down the list. More of a, well, if I have time, it would be a good idea, but if I don't have time, it's not the end of the world. So read over the feedback you've received on your writing project and create a revision plan so that when you sit down to work on revising your writing project, you won't forget any important details and you'll have a plan of attack ready to go.